welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I would like to share with you my thoughts on Fool's Errand, Book 1 of the Tawny trilogy, which is part of the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. I am keeping these thoughts spoiler-free for this video, spoiler-free for not only the Tawny trilogy, but all of the Realm of the Elderlings, so no spoilers whatsoever in here. But I will be in a spoiler-filled discussion over on Mike's channel, Mike's Book Reviews, along with Madison Goodyear, Scott from the Bald Booktuber, and Jake Bishop. We are doing a series of discussions on the Realm of the Elderlings. We already had our discussion of the Farseer trilogy. Go and check it out if you've read Farseer. And soon we will be having our discussion of Live Ship Traders, the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings. And in March, we will be having our discussion on the Tawny trilogy, which I'm incredibly excited for. But for now, let me talk about my reaction, spoiler-free, to Fool's Errand. Now, I was immediately plunged into a warm bath of nostalgia reading the first couple hundred pages of Fool's Errand. It actually increased my appreciation, my enjoyment of the Farseer trilogy, which I read years ago. And the fact is, it laid a wonderful foundation for the Tawny trilogy. But Fool's Errand is also, of course, its very own story. Possibly, and this is saying a lot because Robin Hobb is already a top 3 author for me, having read just 2 of the trilogies in Realm of the Elderlings. But this Fool's Errand is possibly my favorite book by Hobb that I have read so far. So that says a lot. I really loved this book. This is one that is just incredibly deep and moving and hits all the emotions. Robin Hobb is just a consummate author who I admire deeply. So let me talk about some of the things that I think, now that I'm on my 3rd Robin Hobb trilogy, there are some patterns to her writing that I just love. One is the famous slow beginning, and Fool's Errand is incredible, actually, that an author could steep me in somebody's daily life and memories for almost 200 pages and still make me feel so deeply interested and connected to the characters and the world that they dwell in. I don't know any other author who could pull this off the way Robin Hobb does in Fool's Errand. And it just sounds weird that would be so engaging, but for the first couple hundred pages of Fool's Errand, I loved that. I just loved what she did there. And I think what Hobb does is so, if you have a little bit of patience, it increases your connection to the characters so beautifully. Particularly the relationships between them are so vivid and so real. You just feel like you're witnessing a real life relationship. It's just incredible what she achieves. There also are some really wonderful reminders of Farseer. I really appreciated that because it had been years since I read the Farseer trilogy. And so the little nods here and there to Farseer were very helpful to jar my memory as well. So I really appreciated that. And it really does, those first couple hundred pages, they do set up a plot that ends up having some very fast-paced, edge-of-your-seat moments as well later in the book. It really does get going. So the final pages, nothing in this book dragged for me whatsoever, but the final pages really just boom, and that's what is a typical pattern for a fantasy book, and Robin Hobb pulls it off just beautifully in here. Now, I want to talk about some of the themes that are present in Fool's Errand and just so expertly dealt with, so beautifully portrayed. One of them is being in the now, being present. And this is something that perhaps comes more naturally to our fellow creatures than it does to us humans. But being in the moment, appreciating where you are right now, just exhilarating in the beauty that is around you. The just not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past, not dwelling on any of that, just being present. That is a wonderful theme that Hobb does so beautifully in here. And related to that is also the web of life. She so compellingly portrays our relationship to the natural world, to each other, to our fellow beings in this world in Fool's Errand. I just found it so touching and so beautiful. The stages of life, another one that Hobb does just so well. I have a feeling that at the end of all of this, probably the most vivid characters that I will ever feel connected to in all of literature are going to be, if I made a top 10 list and I could include more than one character from one author, Hobb would dominate that top 10 list. And part of it is how wonderfully she gives us various characters at various stages of life. Whatever stage of life you're in, there's somebody in here to give you a sense of recognition. And that is just so wonderful. The crafting of meaning, the quest for purpose. This is something that Robin Hobb really does fantastically in Fool's Errand. How we occupy our lives trying to find meaning and purpose. And that is very much related to that earlier theme of being in the now. Another really poignant theme that Hobb includes in here is remembrance. And related to that is also history, both personal and social, and the interrelationship between one's personal history and the social, and the narratives that we construct in order to make meaning and sense for our lives. Very compellingly portrayed in here. And I will also say that there is a very important theme in here of the persecution of the other, of marginalized groups. This is something that Hobb takes head on in the Tawny Man trilogy, at least so far in Fool's Errand. And I think it's really fantastically done in a fantasy setting that allows us to, struggle with what happens to particular groups. What are the repercussions of the persecution, the prejudice against a certain group? The repercussions both for the people who are made into victims, but also the people who perpetrate certain actions against those people. And what are the repercussions in terms of, some people are going to just want to defend themselves if they belong to a group that is unfairly being persecuted. So it's a really interesting look at that in this fantasy setting that Robin Hobb does. I think a really amazing, nuanced job of looking at that from all those different perspectives, from the perspective of people within the group that is being persecuted, from the perspective of people who are doing the persecuting, from the perspective of people who are caught in the middle as well. So really well done, because there's a lot of nuance. It's not just two groups at play here. There's a lot of other gradations in between those extremes that I think it's just important to acknowledge. And finally, a theme that Robin Hobb just does so well, maybe better than anyone else I've ever seen, is the intimate relationship between love on the one hand and grief on the other hand, because you can't have one without the other. And that really extends to life and death as well. They are very much intertwined, and that is something that she deals with powerfully in Fool's Errand. To such an extent that on a personal level, this was a really helpful book for me to read after my dog passed away fairly recently. I found this to be a very therapeutic read for me, and deeply appreciate what Robin Hobb had to say about that theme of the intertwining of grief and love and life and death. I just think it's just so beautifully done here. And the characters, you have to talk about characters when you talk about Robin Hobb's writing. They are among the most fleshed out, the most compelling, the most beautiful, the characters that you will identify perhaps most strongly with that you'll ever come across. And the key to that is really in the relationships between those characters and how we complete each other in our relationships, how we become part of each other. It's just so done on such a level, and I'm not even talking about humans too, our fellow creatures as well. It's done on such a level in Hobb's writing that these are characters that will just stick with you forever, and it's just so beautiful. And in terms of the magic, you might be familiar if you've read the earlier stuff by Hobb, but there are two types of magic, essentially, the wit and the skill. Because I'm keeping this spoiler-free, I'm not going to say a ton about those things, but I really liked what Hobb did with the wit and the skill. I feel like she's developing something that is going to have repercussions for later books in the series. And I love also how I'm beginning to see more and more connections in terms of the setting and in terms of the overall series, The Realm of the Elderlings, and begin to see more and more connections. So I really do actually recommend at this point, after reading Fool's Errand, I'm thinking, you're going to get the most out of The Realm of the Elderlings if you actually read all the series, all in chronological order, in publishing order. And so, even though, and this is not really a spoiler, the Assassin books, the first ones, the Farseer trilogy, is in a slightly different part of this world from the second trilogy, the Liveship Traders. And there are some connections there, but they are very a bit peripheral, honestly. But those connections seem to be increasing now in the Tawny Man trilogy. So I'm really interested to see how these two parts of Realm of the Elderlings are going to maybe come together, coalesce even more in the future books. I also think that it's great to get to know more of the 6 duchies, and there's some, I think, promise in here that we're going to get to see more parts of this world, the world of the Realm of the Elderlings. So I'm very, very, very excited to continue with the Tawny Man trilogy. I am so excited to get to book 2 next month and to continue and to have those spoiler discussions with Mike and Madison and Scott and Jake. So those are all my thoughts for now, and until next time.